Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and earlier this year, I got a chance to sit down with the LEGO Star Wars design team and learn a lot about the development of this bad boy, alongside a ton of other insights based on the entire LEGO Star Wars theme in general, especially as many people want to know, why did Captain Rex not come with a cloth comma for the legs? Because I know that's the burning question on everyone's mind, but we actually got a chance to ask them a lot of other questions about the overall design process for LEGO Star Wars, the process of picking UCS sets, and most importantly, how this particular set, the big ol' UCS Venator, was designed. And so, let's take a look right now at the actual design interview within LEGO headquarters in Billund, Denmark.
Well, it feels a bit strange for me to be sitting out here rather than bullying the designers from out there, but here we are. Perhaps you all know me, I'm Chris from brickset.com, or Captain Rex 101, as you may know me, and let the designers introduce themselves and their involvement with the model you're seeing here.
Hi, I'm Jackson Hughes. I'm, of course, on the LEGO Star Wars team, and I designed the 75359 332nd Ahsoka Clone Trooper Battle Pack.
And I'm Jens, and I'm creative lead, design director in LEGO Star Wars, and I didn't design any of this. I'm just here.
I'm Candy. I'm Madison O'Neill. I'm a senior graphic designer on the LEGO Star Wars team, and so that means minifigures, stickers, decorated elements. That's all my domain.
Yeah, hi, I'm Hans Schlömer. Retired LEGO Star Wars designer on LEGO icons, but I built the big one.
And I think that's the only place to start, really, isn't it? Yeah, the immediate question about it is, what drew you to the Venator as a subject matter?
Well, I think it was pretty obvious that it was one that was kind of missing in LEGO Star Wars. So we could see that there was a high demand. People really wanted it. And also we thought it was interesting because we have the big models focused a lot on classic over the years, but now looking into other eras like Clone Wars and Tripco. So it was kind of an obvious choice. Plus it's kind of a good looking model.
Absolutely. And the scale of the model is also interesting, because I envisaged, if you did ever do a UCS Venator, that maybe it would be a bit smaller and, you know, a sort of mid-priced UCS set, if you like. So what decided the scale of the model?
That's easy. Jens told me how to make it as long as the Imperial Star Destroyer.
Yeah, and that was, obviously that's considered to be a good size for these capital ships where they have to have that visual presence, and yeah, I think it's worked out well. And the other advantage you have, of course, with the Venator, perhaps over something like an Imperial Star Destroyer, is that it has a bit more sort of surface texture and colour going on. So was that an advantage you had when preparing this model, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't design the Imperial Star Destroyer, but if I would have, I would have tried this approach already. Of course, no dark red, but maybe a little more dark grey. But not sure how it would look if you would have approved by Lucasfilm or by Jens for that matter. But here we were really lucky. We have this great mix of light and dark gray and all the red areas. And you can see we even went for the command shield, so we could also make the red bridges. So yeah, we wanted all the details.
Yes, and from speaking to Henrik, who designed the Imperial Star Destroyer in the past, he's mentioned that he took inspiration, primarily anyway, from actually looking at the studio model. Of course, for the Venator and many things in the prequels, they have never, and indeed in the Clone Wars, of course, they've never existed as a physical thing. So how does that change in terms of looking at source material and reference?
Yeah, I remember Henrik looking at source material, and he showed me some pictures, and it was funny because there were always different details, but that was because there were always bits falling off of the studio models. So there's probably something missing here, which was present on the previous model. So yeah, you could, as a fan, you could then of course go and with this picture, so look, this detail is there, well, it's not there. You have to be careful what you pick. In this case, of course, it was not easier. It's a digital model from Clone Wars. But again, we had to decide which details we want, because the model, even if it was CGI, had changed over the course of the seasons. And I believe we went for it's essentially season 1 Venator. This is also when we see Admiral Yularen on the bridge, basically appears without later on.
Yeah, I think his appearance changes after season 4 or so. It's cool. And, well, what the other thing about this that's interesting is perhaps people, it's hard to say really whether the Venator is more known as associated with the Clone Wars or Revenge of the Sith. But obviously with this one you've gone for the Clone Wars, partly I'm sure based on the anniversary. But there are quite a few differences between them, like the number of engines. There's 10 in the movie versus only 8 in the series. So what decided on going for the Clone Wars animated version?
Well, I think part of it was, as you were talking about, the anniversary inspired us, but again also because we know that there's just so many fans of the Clone Wars animation. So yeah.
And presumably this is testament to a pretty positive response to the Republic gunship as well, that you're willing to explore the prequel era and the Clone Wars indeed for these bigger sets.
I wouldn't over-interpret this. It's just a matter sometimes it takes a while for things to happen. For example, we have done, it took us 20 years to do a new TIE bomber base scale. And they ask why, but it just never fit. And last year the time was suddenly right. And even then, if somebody important would have come in and said, okay, it's now Return of the Jedi, what is your TIE bomber doing in the line? Let's kick it out. It wouldn't have happened again. And that's how it sometimes goes. And with the Venator, I think all the stars aligned in this case.
Yes. And in relation to the Republic gunship, that was another UCS set that you worked on, Hans. And this set contains a very, very much scaled down 3-piece Republic gunship. Was that included as a little hint back to your prior work, and also, of course, the scaling?
Yes, as you know, I like to do that. I put one in the advent calendar too, last year's. And in that case, I thought it would be a little boring to have the same hanger gates on both sides, so I decided to open one. Of course, I had a problem, it was facing a solid structure behind, so I had to create the illusion of, with some black plates, the illusion of death. And I had this big hole on the side. I thought, something's missing, something needs to come flying out of the hanger. So I designed this awesome 3-piece gunship. Yeah, I think we agreed on it together.
Yes, I suppose that's another way in which the ship sort of relates more back to season 1, because if I recall correctly, it's only in the movie and in season 1 where we see those side hangers in use, really. So it's quite a specific detail in that respect. But where hangers are concerned, we have to address the possibility of the dorsal hanger and having a functional one. Is that something that was considered, or was it just not possible?
Here come the hardball questions.
It was considered, but also acknowledging that, it's a pretty complex structure, and there is, there's a structure inside that is just necessary, and that's also giving, because it's actually a super stable model. And that is because of that inner structure. I know we talked a lot about that it was really needed. We didn't want to model that sag. So that's one of the costs, is that, hey, we just said, no, we can't make that, but we'll get a super stable model that looks great and doesn't sag. So,
Yes, and having built it structurally, it is surprisingly, both similar and surprisingly different to the Imperial Star Destroyer.
Yes, my surprise too, because my initial plan was to take all the learnings from the internal structure of the Imperial Star Destroyer, which remember is 100% technique, but it's very light, very sturdy, and I thought, it's a Star Destroyer, just copy it for that. And imagine my surprise when I figured out it's not working at all. Because the differences are, this one, the Venator, is a lot flatter than the Imperial, so you have a lot less height to work with. And on the technique frame on the inside, you need some height. You also need the width. The Imperial Star Destroyer is one big triangle on the sides. You have these sides going down all the way. They add a lot of strength to the model. You see here, there's nothing here. It's a big cutout here where you get nothing for internal support. So all the strengths have to come from that one spine that runs from here all the way to the front. So far so good. But suddenly I had a problem that the nose was starting to point down, and for a long time I couldn't figure out what was going on there. I moved the stand a little bit, still didn't work. Then I realized it was the tail that was creating the problem, because there's a lot of mass on the tails. Someone told me it's 1 kilo of bricks in the tail. And that was pulling down the spine in the back, which means it was bending up in the front, and then caused the front to bend down. So it wasn't drooping, it was pushed down by the tail. So the trick here was to lock the tail to the structure, and that fixed the bending.
Yes, I can imagine having the bridge command structure there sort of helps, because it gives you a bit of an anchor.
It adds a little bit of weight, yes. In the end it worked out, but so halfway through, the few moments I thought, oh, what's going on here? Huh? It's supposed to be easier, like on the Imperial Star Destroyer.
Yeah. And you also mentioned that, and perhaps you all saw, but it's quite easy to pick up this model just from the underside, whereas with the Imperial Star Destroyer, if you did that, you might have some flexing of the plates, and that has a dedicated handle built into it. So I'm sure that was a consideration of just how you're going to design this thing to be moved and handled.
I think you give me a little too much credit now. It was definitely not designed to be moved. It was supposed to find a nice home inside a glass case on a nice shelf, because that's how I know I will store a display at home, in a glass case. And because the model is so relatively narrow compared to the Imperial Star Destroyer, it will fit a wider board in the living room. Put it in a glass case, that means protected against dust and cats for that matter. And that's important for me, because I sell cats, and they would make short work of this. I destroyed an Imperial Star Destroyer, took it down, and then dismantled it. So, not here, this will rest in a glass case.
They hate Star Wars. They're big Lord of the Rings fans. Or Star Trek.
Yes, and you also alluded to the display stands earlier, and the fact this model, of course, has 2. Was that always the strategy from the beginning to have the 2?
I think that was never a question. No.
Because again, I'm conscious that Henrik had encountered some challenges with this display stand for the Imperial Star Destroyer, and changing the shape of it and that sort of thing to balance
But
it.
again, and here it is 2 ships, even though it starts first both of them, they have a very different, how do you say, look,
Yeah.
which also impacts, for instance, how the stand is built and so on.
Yeah, I wanted to keep the stand simple, not to take away. It's like a picture frame. If you have a very busy picture, you go with a simple frame. And I didn't want to connect it. I wanted 2 separate stands.
Yes, and
With a separate display to move around.
And you mentioned earlier having sort of targeted the same length as the Imperial Star Destroyer, and as far as I'm aware, you got it to like the centimetre, the same length. Was that a great challenge at any point, or did it just happen to work out quite nicely that way, that proportionally it just worked?
Well, I'm mostly a digital designer, so I designed the whole thing on computer first, and then went to town and build, made some changes. But the most difficult part, the one that I really saved for last, was the red stripe. It's very, I know it had to be very, very flat, so it doesn't stick out from the heart, just a little bit. And it also has this angle. I didn't want any steps in there. I've seen other models where red stripe was designed with steps. And I wanted smooth lines.
Nice.
So it had to be built like this, but it creates some challenges with stability. It's very long, but it's also very thin. But as a Lego model, it has to be stable during all phases of the build, not just on the finished model. Yeah, and that was a big challenge. I would even say it's one bag for its stripe. I would say this is the most difficult bag I had designed and built in 12 years.
Yes, because it's just attached with 1 or 2 clips to the...
It's just attached by one creative clip. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm also conscious that another thing that I believe you mentioned in the instruction manual was being a challenge was the engines, because there's quite a lot of overhang and therefore the potential to sag. So how did you go about avoiding that?
Yeah, I didn't want to use too many elements building the engines, because I knew weight wouldn't work in my favor. And I always had these power miner wheels in mind because they are really lovely detailed. And yeah, problem was I needed a third color. I already used dark gray and light gray on the hull, but the engines were a darker color, but not black. Black would have been too dark. So I settled on this dark metallic color. Well, we didn't have all the elements. Somewhere I made this power minus wheel that was used frequently. But the racing wheel I have there, this is the first time it appears in dark metallic. And when you want to color change a part of dark metallic, we have to start a huge investigation. Is it possible to mold this and lines and we don't want flow lines and bricks? But in this case it worked out and
And I think it's also
worked pretty well.
pretty nice color for rims on a red car too.
And I suppose the other factor in any UCS set is going to be the minifigures. And so, firstly, how did you decide to go with Admiral Yularen and Captain Rex?
Well, Admiral Yularen was a pretty clear choice for something like this, just because we always see him on the bridge as far as characters associated with this specific vehicle. He's definitely up there. And then Rex, I think the discussion was what characters are people going to be most excited about, and of course he was right there at the top of the list as well. So yeah, I think that was pretty much, I don't think there was a ton of discussion, to be honest, regarding who we're putting in. Pretty clear-cut choices for us in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, of course this Captain Rex has the, or I suppose maybe he's Commander Rex in that moment where he has the little plaster on his head as a unique detail.
Sure.
Was that included just perhaps as a nice detail, but also you could almost say the characters are kind of framing the Clone Wars, in that you've got Yularen, whose voiceover is starting, each episode and the movie, and then Captain Rex right at the end.
Yeah, kind of capturing the whole gamut of Clone Wars in a way. I think at the time we were working on this, that last season of Clone Wars was very popular with everyone. We were talking about it a lot. So adding that little extra detail to Rex to make it something a little special, a little unique. Yeah.
Yes, and in relation to the Captain Rex minifigure, of course, a topic of discussion has been the printed Karma, rather than perhaps using a fabric one, as you have sometimes in the past. So, what was the decision as far as that?
So, yeah, regarding the fabric Karmas versus the printed ones, there was kind of a decision internally that we wanted a consistent approach to all the clone trooper characters that have the Kama. We know that kids find it tricky to put on. We know that it limits the kind of movement of the minifigure, and they can't sit down, that kind of stuff. So for consistency's sake, we made the decision that we would just do a printed approach on those for now.
Okay, so between the 501st Battle Pack, that has, again, the printed Karma, and Commander Fox as well. So yeah, it's just for
consistency between all, like, small price points, large price points, all the same. Yes.
And another question, which I think spans decorated elements and hands as well, is the use of stickers for these little sort of ridge details immediately in front of the bridge superstructure, which I was perhaps a bit surprised that wasn't, well, looking at pictures of it, I was surprised it wasn't brick built, but then building it, that area of the model is quite thin, so I wondered if that was why those stickers had been needed, because you just needed a nice tile that kept it all rigid.
Yeah, we really didn't want stickers on this model, so we decided that pretty early on. So imagine our surprise when we figured out that we had to use a 6x6 tile for the size of the fleet logo. And then we were told, no, we can't print on this thing. It has its inlet in the middle. As you can see, it has solid color in the middle.
It would have created a large gray dot right in the center of the logo. So that was part of the decision to include a sticker sheet as well to capture a few little details here and there. But that was kind of the main deciding factor on that one, unfortunately.
Exactly. And once we had the sticker sheet, and I thought, well, I have 4 more big elements. It's some extra stickers, so they're really there for bonus. They wouldn't be there otherwise. Or any decals.
Right, well, speaking of stickers, and of course the Clone Wars range this year has not been limited to the Venator, although we may well come back to it. It's certainly exciting. And perhaps move on to the Coruscant Guard gunship, which is sitting here in front of us. And I have to say, my immediate question has to be, why go for a Coruscant Guard Republic gunship rather than the more sort of traditional version?
It was because we wanted to make something new, never seen before in Lego. So, and because we believe it looks really, really cool. So that was really the reason behind it. We wanted to try something different.
I suppose it's also testament to the fact that really anything is on the table, almost no matter how obscure. I mean, I think I counted it's on screen for 66 seconds. So,
67.
Oh,
67.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty brief.
It is, and you were right. But still, again, it's there and it looks cool. And we just thought, hey, we can really give it a twist to the gunship. So that was the reason behind it.
I think it's also one of those things in Star Wars where, like, oh, this is the Coruscant Guard gunship. You can assume that they're being used a lot, like on Coruscant and in universe, and in a lot of the scenes that we've been familiar with. So in that way, it kind of it's nice to also get some characters that we were excited to include in this one that are kind of Coruscant based in a way.
We've seen from David that it can be colour swapped if you choose. But the other thing about it that's interesting is just the size. This one's a little bit more compact than the previous gunships that we've had. So what decided the scale this time around?
Well, the size is, first of all, a model like that is one that should be swooshable. So stability and playability, that's really, really important with a model. And that's often the challenge with these bigger models. But here, with that size, it is actually also a very stable model that can be handled. So that was really the deciding factor on the size of it.
Yes, and you've still got space for much of the necessary detail, and it's also quite interesting that I feel with this one, the panels tend to all sit a bit more flush together. So was that something from the previous models that you were looking to improve upon, perhaps?
Yeah, but I think in general, what we are always trying to improve from a previous model, and that's both. We really go through all consumer feedback, both good and bad, and if there are good things, then we of course keeping it. If there are not so good things, then we are trying to improve them. So that's always a really, really important part when we are designing something that had existed before in Lego, and definitely the case also with the gunship. We know something like the handle is really something that's appreciated, and but also there are some things. And I've also seen online that there are some that have changed the doors here because they technically the doors should have been double, but it just didn't work. It was way too fragile. So we decided, hey, we go with the standard doors, and it gives much easier access to the interior. Where we thought it's important that you place minifigures inside. You can buy the labels in the front opens up. You can also place minifigures inside there. So that was a small compromise on the design, but again, because we wanted this to be a very good toy.
Yes, and I also sort of speculated in my own mind beforehand that perhaps you had selected the Coruscant Guard livery partly because it gave you an opportunity to include Chancellor Palpatine and Padme minifigures, who are often quite difficult to put in sets because they spend a lot of time in the Senate, not necessarily conducive to play, although, fingers crossed. So was that a factor in wanting to get those characters out there?
For sure. Yep. 100%. Yeah, because when you have a gunship, they're used all over the galaxy. You could place it pretty much anywhere, but of course, Coruscant for those guys. Yeah.
Yes, and for Padme in particular, of course, she notoriously has a lot of outfit changes throughout the movies and indeed the Clone Wars. So, what prompted you to go for that sort of outfit you did?
Well, for that one, we haven't made her in a similar outfit I think perhaps there was the previous Clone Wars style version of her. So it's been quite a while, but in my mind at least, that's one of her more like memorable kind of action costumes, you know, if you want to put her into that context rather than kind of her senatorial garb, which is pretty but maybe a little less interesting to play with, perhaps, you know.
Yes. And of course, as ever, these Clone Wars sets sort of run the gamut of sizes and come right down to the battle packs, and I think both of them have been exciting this year. You know, it's Clone Trooper battle packs are always something that people are going for, and you know, 2 in 1 year is a pretty solid going. So how did you decide to go with these particular legions and indeed trooper designs for these battle packs?
Gotcha. Well, again, talking about like the last season of Clone Wars kind of being all the rage, you know, at the time of some of these decisions being made. We had just seen the attack on Mandalore. So of course, the Ahsoka troopers down here, 332nd, are very cool, and you get the Captain Vaughn character as well. And then these ones here, I mean, people love 501st Troopers, so to give them the whole gamut of possible different types of specialists, we actually leaned into some reference from Battlefront 2, where you can use the different specialists, officers, heavy troopers, and so we've created a little lineup here based off that.
And the other interesting thing about these 2 battle packs this year is that both of the vehicles are based on vehicles from movies or TV, which hasn't always been possible in the past. So is that something that you like to do when you can, to include a canon vehicle?
Yes, but and again, it's like we have done models where it's something we have more or less developed, but we always want to offer something that works well, and here, you say you might not see the Ahsoka troopers together with the Swamp Speeder, but still the Swamp Speeder is just a super cool vehicle. That it's also a long time since we've done that in Lego, and we also figured out that it was actually possible to scale it down to the battle pack size.
Yeah, we have a lot of really nice new round elements, constantly new elements. That's something nice when we revisit a model, as we see how can we make it better, improved from the last time. And there's those round 3x3 elements. I think, I'm not going to say when they first appeared because I can't remember for sure actually, but they're pretty recent and they're perfect for that front shielding there. Like Dan said, it's been a long time, so we had an opportunity to do it again and to improve it.
And we also have Yoda's Jedi Starfighter coming out this year, and that was a bit of perhaps a surprising choice, given that again it's only in a single arc. But yeah, what drew you to that as opposed to other Jedi Starfighter or Interceptor designs?
Well, first of all, I want to say that it's probably not the last Jedi Starfighter you'll see from Lego. That's just without promising anything. Then that's just a fact. But again, we were choosing Yoda Starfighter because of the huge popularity of that character, and well, it is beside him. Yeah, it's a cool little fighter.
And Yoda's an extremely popular character with kids.
Yeah.
So it sort of fills that gap between, I think he's currently in the 18 plus Dagobah diorama set and the 4 plus Jedi Temple on Tanu set. So I guess this fills the gap.
The Yoda gap.
Yeah.
Yes. Makes sense. And I'm conscious, as far as I know, that the designer of that set isn't here, but do you know of any sort of learnings that they were taken from the previous design? Because this one, again, I was surprised by how different it is, and it also uses those 3x3 circle pieces.
But again, it's the same story as with the God ship. Looking into what can be improved here. Actually, there wasn't a lot of feedback on it about problems or something. But again, we take fresh eyes on it, and then again, as mentioned, we have new elements, new opportunities. So most often we design from scratch again.
Yeah. And moving on to the final sets that we have here are the helmets, which of course are something which we've now seen for a few years and have been focused on the original trilogy and The Mandalorian. So, was it always the plan to eventually have prequel era representation in the Helmet series?
It's hard to avoid.
I think these characters came up a lot in our brainstorms, like
Yes,
even early
yes.
on.
And we also saw that there was a high demand among fans for them. They're such popular characters, and we pay attention to what is said online, and that makes it into suggestions in our meetings.
Yeah.
And in terms of choosing the phases for each character, did they sort of choose themselves because the Phase 2 Rex is so iconic?
Well, first of all, we decided right away we wanted to do a phase 1 and a phase 2 because they are more different. So that was that was, how do you say, a quick decision. So, but I can't even remember why we decided which one would be what.
No, I can't say I do right now.
I mean, it might have been that, you know, like you were saying, in the moment that these decisions were being made, Phase 2 Rex have been seen recently
Yeah,
in the final
that's true.
arc of Clone Wars, so very popular.
That was a factor.
Yeah.
Yes, and I suppose my final question, just bringing things all the way back to the Venator, but keeping on Rex, because he's always on my mind, of course, is was it just a sort of coincidence that the set number for this set is 75367, and of course if you just snip the 3 out of the middle, we've got CT 7567, Captain Rex himself.
We thought
Just
of
a
everything.
You put that down as intended.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Planned things. No, well,
Pulling all the strings back here.
well, thanks very much for answering all my questions, guys, and I'm sure everybody else has plenty for you as well. Look forward to them.
Well, there were less tweaks necessary than we might think. I mean, I'm doing this for over 20 years now, so I'm not building a widely installed models digitally. So all the bricks are there internally. As I said, there was just some adjustment needed to allow for the weight of the tail. Some more locking, some additional plates on top to keep the tail straight. Yes, and I had to move one of the stands a little bit. That was really all. The rest, it was more interesting looking at reference of the Venator. For example, if you look at there's a hanger on the underside. I'm sure you've all noticed. And on the blueprints, this hanger goes way half through the ship, cutting into the structure. So it's one of these models in Star Wars that this is all hull and interior, but no structure on the inside whatsoever. So I had to get all of it.
Thanks. So I could talk all day about these. I love these sets. They're amazing. I was lucky enough to build the Venator as a review copy. It's awesome. So thank you. Never built anything of that size or scale. I think I'll prioritise my question to the helmets. I know you said you wanted to have a phase 1 and phase 2 for variety. Was there also maybe something in mind of, well, modders are going to take hold of this and go with phase 2 versions of the Clone Troopers, phase 1 versions of Clone Troopers? Because I've done an awful lot of work modding those guys, and they're really easy to modify. So, thank you.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, there's so many different. This kind of gives you a great template, right? A great canvas to work with. So we always encourage that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's the spirit of Lego. Coined.
Yeah.
It kind of would have been a shame if you did do maybe 2 phase 2, because then you don't have a blueprint for phase 1.
More variety.
Yeah.
This is a question for, I guess, the whole team. Now that you guys are doing a lot more Clone Wars era, ships, characters, minifigures, when historically it's mostly been focused on original trilogy. Have you guys developed an appreciation for the characters, the ship designs, the whole prequel era?
Oh yeah.
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 I would say so.
I've always liked the prequel. It's very nostalgic for me, but it's my childhood.
Yeah, that's of course that's what we're aware of. I'm so old, so I remember when I was a child, it was the original trilogy that came out, but still just seeing the younger generations, they have absolutely the same love for people and Clone Wars. So we definitely want to support that.
And you hang out with Doug Chang sometimes too, so like, you know, he's the dude
Yeah.
when it comes to that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Lovely. Actually, perfectly building off of that, I'm interested about how you choose nostalgic sets, because obviously this is the 20th anniversary of the Clone Wars, and we're getting to the point where kids who grew up watching the Clone Wars are now old enough to have disposable income. To what extent do you make decisions around sets based on an awareness of the kind of the nostalgia and the age of the demographic that you're targeting when it comes to the larger adult aimed Star Wars sets?
Well, I think, one thing we know is, of course, that there are adults now that are super much, that grew up with Clone Wars, and that make a difference. That also, give us the opportunity to bring out this, because there is an adult audience that are really, really into this. But I think it's also a mix, and we acknowledge that it's a generational thing. So that's why we also offer things for kids, and we know very much, and we will so much, if we can, stimulate dads and moms to play with the kids, and they have a common interest in this, then that's just, that's really our aim. So it's not like we go all adult with Clone Wars, for instance. We want to make sure there's something for everybody.
Thank you. And so are you going to be exploring this in future as well? That's a question I know you're not going to answer. Are you still considering kind of how each generation successively gets older as you're kind of choosing which sets to build at large scale and which at small scale, and kind of meeting those different needs?
Yeah, we're trying to follow the needs, and we definitely also, I'd say an important thing for us is really to follow also the fora on the internet and what's requested, and we could see this one was an obvious choice. It's been on our wish list also for quite a while, but now was the right time. So we are influenced, and we really strive to do our best to deliver whatever you guys want. That's as short as it can be said.
And your guys' interest drives the portfolio for sure, influences it.
Of course, you said yourself that there could be more Jedi Starfighters to come.
Did I say that?
I think you said that you haven't seen the last
Well,
Starfighter ever.
I'm making a leap.
Hard to avoid them.
I was curious, you mentioned that there was a difference in the number of engines between the movie and the TV show. Are there other things on any of these models that you found that, on the Harry Potter side of things, they talk a lot about how, Hogwarts changed across all the different movies, and so you have to kind of make these judgment calls as to which variant, if you will, that you're going for. Is there stuff like that in these models? And then I was also curious, you mentioned that the older stuff, it's a lot of physical models, pictures of things that were actually built, and obviously more modern, it's all digital. Is there one or the other that is more consistent? Like when they were doing physical models, were they more consistent, or did they have just as many differences across them that you still have to make those same judgment calls?
I don't know if
for the reference. Yeah, I think they both have benefits and drawbacks, because I think, like you mentioned, Hans, the physical ones, they would have to change them. So you end up having some inconsistencies, especially like in 1977 when maybe there weren't as many people on continuity with the films and stuff. And digital, of course, you have the one model you get, they give you all the turnarounds you see from every angle. But you can make changes to the digital model late in the game that you couldn't with the physical stuff. So there can be opportunities for them to make very late changes that maybe we can't react to with fully digital stuff. Color changes, little tweaks mostly. But so I'd say that's like the give and take with digital versus physical. And we still see physical stuff. They're still building some physical stuff for the sets and things, so we get to see a lot of cool,
even
full-size
props.
Yeah. We went to Pinewood a few years ago and got to see the Tantive 4, like the full-size, life-size thing in a giant warehouse. It was absolutely amazing. So yeah, they still do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just to be clear here, there wasn't picking and choosing between movie version and Chrome OS version. We went for the Chrome OS version.
James.
Thank you very much. It's a superb. I mean, all the sets you've got on the table are awesome. But in terms of minifigures, obviously Rex is a hugely popular character, hasn't been in minifigure form for a long time. And there's still a lot of the younger generation that can't aspire necessarily to buy the Venator.
Sure.
So are you aware of the need potentially, like you did with the gunship, when those minifigures were available later, maybe in a different form or whatever? So are you aware of the need to do that further down the line, so that, you know, potentially Rex without the blaster or something like that, that makes it accessible for those that can't afford to buy something as big as this?
Yeah, of course we always want to make popular characters accessible to everyone if we can. So of course we can't say anything for sure about these things, but yes, we're aware of that for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Building off of that, of course, Rex is a character a lot of people have wanted an updated version of. This one really delivers with arm printing. That's something relatively new for the Star Wars catalog. You don't see it quite as often as other themes, and so can you speak about how you came to include arm printing on this Rex, and if that maybe opens the door for more arm printing in the Star Wars catalog going forward?
Certainly. Yes, we know that it's a very fun detail. I love putting arm printing on the characters. It does give them a very exclusive kind of fancy touch to them. And yeah, of course, for a model like this, we're trying to put all the details in that we can, so that made sense. And especially for characters that do have a lot of details on their arms, we've done some for Mandalorian characters like Bo-Katan and Mando, because they have a lot going on. And it basically just comes down to a matter of complexity. Essentially, we can only make so many decorations a year. These basically count as 1-2 decorations, the same as a face, the same as, legs or what have you. So it all just comes down, you should see my spreadsheets of how we balance where everything goes. So when we have special cases and things that we think, give it a little, we should give this a little bump up, or it's simply just necessary to capture the character properly, then we're gonna try and do the arm printing. Yep, indeed.
I guess after the successful pilot tests in the UK of recoloring certain sets, in the past year we've gotten some more recolored sets like the Crater Parrot, and I think next year we're getting the Spider-Man car. I'm kind of curious that, obviously without spoiling anything about future stuff, are sets like, for example, the gunship now being designed with the potential of, well, maybe if LEGO decides down the line, if this is popular, could we recolor it to a regular version in the future? Is that being taken into consideration, or are those things like what has been demonstrated that you can recolor this more like happy accidents where it just happens to work out?
Well, there's of course the potential to make a standard gunship here, and it's something, again, we can talk about
of course,
future, but again, we've also in the past done several actually Jedi Starfighters for different pilots and so on. So of course it's an opportunity, but how do you say, saying that, hey, we have a plan of doing this,
of course,
I can't say that, but we are totally aware, of course. But again, here with the gunship, for instance, we just saw an opportunity to try something new, and we want to bring out something never seen before.
Makes sense. Thank you. Alright, and with that, we have summed up our look at the LEGO Star Wars design team's interview for LEGO Fan Media Days. First of all, thank you so much to the design team for actually being able to conduct this and answer all of our questions. To an extent, yes, I understand why they did not include a comma for Rex, especially because now we know he's going to be coming in a microfighter set and they want to have internal consistency. But to be honest, I also feel that the argument for internal consistency could also apply to arm printing, where obviously they did something special with arm printing for the Venator set, and then you could argue that, well, then maybe all the clones should have arm printing, which is a ridiculous ask, but I can see the logic. I understand it. It is annoying to put the cloth comma on, especially for kids, but it is what it is, and it was really interesting hearing that directly answered from the team, as well as a ton of other questions answered, so hopefully this was an informative interview session, and big thank you to Chris over at Brickset, that's other Chris, for conducting and hosting the interview. Hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for tuning in. Bye for now.